Okay, go ahead, Angela.
All right. Thanks everyone for joining us today. My name is Angela Siwan, and I am a volunteer with the ALS Society of BC and a facilitator of the in-person Burnaby ALS support group. It is my pleasure to welcome you to Patient Information Webinar Series number 12. Before we begin, please note that today's webinar is being recorded and will be posted on the ALS Society of BC website for future viewing. We will have time for questions and answers at the end of the presentation. Please submit your questions using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. For any reason, if you cannot see the Q&A button, there is a More button also at the bottom of the screen. And if you click on that, it should expand your options. All questions are anonymous, so please feel free to ask whatever is on your mind. The Patient Information Webinar Series is proudly presented by Shionogi Canada Inc., and we are grateful for their ongoing support in helping us bring valuable educational programs to the ALS community. Today, we are delighted to welcome Kerry Adams, a speech-language pathologist with more than 20 years of experience supporting individuals living with neurological conditions, including ALS. Kerry is a speech-language pathologist with the Edmonton ALS Clinic and the founder of Empower Speech Solution. Her clinical focus includes communication, swallowing, and augmentative and alternative communication, AAC, supporting people living with ALS and their caregivers through the many changes the disease can bring. She is widely respected for her compassionate and practical approach, as well as her ability to navigate challenging conversation with honesty, warmth, and hope. Kerry has presented nationally and internationally on ALS-related topics and is deeply committed to improving quality of life through patient-centered collaborative care. In today's session, Kerry will discuss strategies to support communication, explore options for voice preservation, including AI voice cloning, and review a range of communication tools and technology that can help individuals maintain connection, independence, and self-expression throughout all stages of ALS. Please join me in welcoming Kerry Adams. We are so grateful to have her with us today and looking forward to learning from her experience and expertise.
Thank you. Ooh, that was a big mouthful. I am going to just share my slides here before I get going. And we're going to start here and here, there. All right. Well, thank you very much for having me today. As you mentioned, I've had the privilege of working with the Edmonton ALS Clinic for a long 20 years, and I'm not planning on stopping yet. So it's my privilege to work with people with ALS and their families. I'm honored to share the presentation today, and I hope that you find it really helpful. As already discussed, we're going to talk today about planning ahead. We'll talk about how speech can change in ALS, what you can do now to preserve your voice. We'll talk about strategies that help you communicate as clearly as possible, and some technology and communication tools available if your speech changes in the future. So people often think that SLPs only work on speech, or first, even what is SLP? So speech language pathologist. We have a master's level degree, and we don't just work on speech. In fact, in ALS, our role is much broader. We support speech, swallowing, breathing, communication technology, and cognitive communication. But perhaps most importantly, we focus on staying one step ahead. So rather than waiting until communication becomes difficult, we monitor for early changes so that we can introduce strategies and tools for when they're most helpful. As you are probably very aware, ALS is one disease, but it doesn't look the same for everyone. The symptoms you first notice depend on where the disease begins, as you know. And about 3/4 of people have spinal or limb onset ALS. And they first notice the weakness might be in an arm or a leg, might have cramping or changes in mobility, while their speech and their swallowing are completely normal. Then you have about 1/4 of people that have bulbar onset ALS, where speech and swallowing are affected first. And then a small number of people first notice breathing difficulties. But this is why the timing of SLP involvement is so important. If I only saw people when speech and swallowing changed, I'd miss the opportunity to prepare many people with spinal onset ALS while their communication is still strong. So this gives us a chance to establish baseline, monitor for subtle changes over time, discuss voice preservation before it's urgent, and then introduce breathing exercises when appropriate, like respiratory muscle strength training, and make sure that patients know their communication options long before they need them. Now, we'll talk about planning today, as we've mentioned, but not everyone will experience a complete loss of speech. But ALS can impact speech and voice in many different ways, and it's important that we be proactive and connected with an SLP. So think about this. There are changes that are affected by weakened tongue or lip or face muscles, and when that happens, there's slurring, right? But sometimes there is not slurring with people. There might be changes to their voice muscles or their breathing muscles that then make the voice really soft. Excuse me. And this can result in a voice change, of course, which can also impact communication. There are actually quite a number of people that I have that don't have speech impairment, but they're on BiPAP sometimes 24/7, or at least long enough during the day that their communication is affected. So I'm still called out to assist with them, even though they technically don't have a speech issue, right? So the next few slides are literally for everyone, regardless of the type of ALS that they have. And we'll be talking about planning for the possible speech or voice changes. All right, the big topic, voice preservation. So it's been a hot topic for a number of years. It's changed a lot, and it will continue to change as technology evolves. But over my 20 years in ALS, I will say this is the most exciting time thus far in terms of what we can offer. So what is it? Voice preservation is recording and storing your natural voice. It's like an insurance policy for your voice, okay? Why? Why do I do this? So that you can still sound like you, even if your speech and voice changes, because voice is part of our identity. And, you think about the times that you recognize someone just by their voice. You don't see them, but you know it's them, right? Our voice is really important. So when should you do this? Whatever it is that this is, right? The earlier, the better. So when there are no speech changes at all would be great. So that's those that might have spinal onset ALS. Mild speech changes are still okay to be working through the recordings that I'll speak about. And even if you do find that speech is too affected, you can actually likely use recordings from previous, like pre-ALS diagnosis. So the earlier, the better though. But now the big question is how? How? What is this? And I'm going to go through the things listed there. But I want to say at this point, it is at this point that people look a little confused. And they go, well, I get the idea. Okay, there's this voice preservation and somehow I'm going to save my voice. But wait, what do I do with that voice? So I think before I go through the hows, I'm going to just show you a quick video to kind of get your mind around the context of what would you actually do with this preserved voice. And then we'll go back to the how. All right, so let's go through this video here. I'm going to show you how to use a text-to-speech app on your phone or tablet, or even if you had a device of some kind. I'm going to use this speech app called Speech Assistant, which is on my top left here. If I click on that, I come up to this screen here that has a blank window for me to, I could touch it and I could then type any message that I want to say. Hello, it's Kerry, and speak it with the little speak button on the right.
Hello, it's Kerry.
Or I could go down to any of these categories that I have listed here, but I'm trying to find, where did I put my drive-through? Here it is, drive-through. All right, let's say I'm driving up, my speech is not super clear. I need to use something to supplement my speech so they can hear and understand me. So I click on the top right there, hi, I'd like.
Hi, I'd like large tea and chocolate glazed donut.
And then they'll say, is that all?
That's all. Thanks.
Sure. That's the idea of using pre-stored messages that we've got here and that we can customize, or coming up to the window and saying anything you want.
No way.
Okay. So that's just a quick example of how to use a text-to-speech with computerized voice or AI voice cloning or voice banked voice. And I'll explain more in a minute. Okay. So the first step is to preserve your voice and then possibly use it on a text-to-speech app. Okay. Think about the voice like we do, the voice on these devices, like we do ringtones. So in our phone, we have, a lot of different ringtones that we could use. That's the same kind of idea, is that once you have an app, and I'm just going to keep talking about app as if I was using it on my phone, okay? There are other ways as well, but the general principle is you get this tool that you're going to communicate with and you need a voice of some kind. Well, look here, I've got a list. I could do Ava, Catherine, or Samantha that are technically generic computerized voices. And that's one of them that you heard. It sounds generic, but some people are fine with that. Then there's the personal voice, which I did through voice banking. And then there's also the 11 Labs voice, which is the cloning voice. So I've got them all listed there and I can choose which one I want at any time. So think about it like that. Okay. So now let's go back to that slide of, okay, I get the idea of preserving my voice, recording to some degree. How? Let's go through each one of them. Message banking. Okay. The simplest way to preserve your voice is something called message banking. So rather than recording hundreds of sentences, you're simply going to record messages that are unique to you. So think about phrases your family would miss hearing. Might be I love you or happy birthday. Or I have a client who, when he calls his wife, her name is Stacy, but he goes, hey, Stace. So that's his. And to get a computer to say that is not going to happen just like that. So he could actually record that and then stick it on a button like I did in my drive-through that says Stace. And then when he plays it, it will in his voice say, hey, Stace. Okay. So the beauty of message banking is that it is your real voice, capturing your humor, your emotion, or the way you naturally say those words, okay? The trade-off is that it is limiting. You can't create or type sentences like I did when I said no way, right? They're simply individual recordings that you can play back when you hit that specific button. So all you need to do this is your phone and the voice memo app or any recording app. And I would just encourage people to start with just 10 to 20 meaningful messages. Like you look up here on the slide and someone might really say like, oh, things like you wish, just like that. Or I have one friend that always goes, are you serious? So those are the little tags that you might record. That's what message banking is for. Now, sometimes people get this a little bit confused with legacy banking. So I kept this slide white because I want you to think this is not actually part of the technology training and things that we do. This is different. This is not message banking. This is not used in a device for communication purposes. But what it is recording meaningful personal messages or stories or advice or things like that, personal memories, that you want to preserve for your legacy, not to be used in your phone for communication. This is what you would keep and pass on to your family, whether that be advice or how to change a tire or things like that. Whereas message banking and voice banking or voice preservation and cloning, those are all attached to a device that become your voice. So that's a different story, okay? Let's see. Things to consider here. Well, just what I said, it isn't about technology, it's preserving your connection. Some people find this really hard to do and they don't do it because it is very emotional, and that's okay. This is just something for you to know is out there and an option for you. But getting back to the green slides, coming back now, we had message banking and now voice banking. So unlike message banking, which will preserve specific phrases, voice banking creates a digital version of your voice that can be used to say new things, like when I typed out "no way," okay? You record a series of prompted sentences through a service such as Apple Personal Voice or VoiceKeeper or Model Talker. And then the computer learns the characteristics of your voice, the pitch, the tone, the style, and then it creates this personalized, synthetic, so computerized a bit, but it's personalized voice of you. One important thing to understand is that it won't sound exactly like you. The technology has really improved, but it is still a computerized generated voice, okay? I would say that the biggest limitation is timing. So voice banking works best when your speech is still relatively clear because the computer needs a good quality recording to learn from. So it takes some time, and there also may be a cost. And that's why, again, we introduce the topic early to people so that they have options rather than feeling rushed. Well, let's listen to one as an example. Now, this lady, she had ALS for quite some time and her speech had already changed quite a bit. And back when she did this, we did not have what's coming up next, voice cloning. So she had to do what she could only do right then, was record her speech even though it was slightly affected. She was still very happy with the actual product because it still sounded like her. So listen to this. This is her natural voice, just recording so that we could hear what she sounds like in person.
How are you? I am good. I am recording this in my normal voice.
Okay, that's her normal voice. This is her after, so she's now typing in the sentence that's going to be playing, and then the device is speaking for her in this voice banked voice.
How are you? I am good. I am happy with my voice. It will help me reach of myself. That gave me a trophic lateral sclerosis cannot take.
Okay, so honestly, this was about 2019, so it's not that long ago. And when we were doing that, we were all thrilled. We're like, oh my goodness, this sounds like her, even though it's computerized and it's synthetic and you can hear that choppiness and there isn't that emotional inflection. It sounded quite a bit like her. So this is what voice banking is, okay? Now, what about cloning though? So the newest option is called artificial intelligence voice cloning. And it's probably the biggest advancement that we've seen in voice preservation over the last few years. But unlike traditional voice banking, which requires you to read hundreds of sentences, AI voice cloning can learn from your voice from much shorter recordings. So depending on the program, that could be anything from 10 seconds, like a voicemail greeting, to 30 or more minutes. So it creates a digital voice that sounds remarkably similar to you. The biggest advantages are flexibility. Quite honestly, the recordings don't even have to be specially prepared. You don't have to sit and read like preset sentences like you do for voice banking. Here, they can come from a home video, a voicemail greeting. So it can be things from before your ALS diagnosis. But if you don't have that and you still have either fully functional speech or even speech that's mildly affected, you can still do any kind of recording like reading a story or simply talking naturally into the voice recorder, and you get the recording that we can then upload to 11 Labs. So one of the platforms that many people are using today is called 11 Labs, and they are currently offering free licenses to people with ALS. So once your voice is created, it can be integrated then into any text-to-speech app like I showed you, and then the communication device. And so that when you type, the device speaks your cloned voice, okay? So as impressive as it isn't perfect. It is designed to sound like you, but not replace you, okay? And because it creates a very realistic digital version of your voice, there are very important ethical and privacy considerations. And those considerations are important enough that I'd like to spend the next few minutes talking about how to use this tech safely and ethically before deciding that it's the right option for you. We'll just say again, like, I don't believe that voice cloning is necessarily for everyone and that everyone has to do it. And there are some caveats that we'd have to talk about as, you know, your SLP to you about like, how can you actually use this 11 Labs voice? There's a few things here or there. They're actually very workable, but there's a few little things. It's not perfect, but it is quite amazing. But I think, you know, everyone deserves to know what's available so that they can make an informed decision. So before we talk about the ethics, let's just listen to a voice. No, don't do that yet. To a voice clone sample. Okay, let's try this. Okay, so this is the natural voice. This lady does not have a speech impairment. So this is her natural speech where she just recorded into her voice memo app.
We always encourage our kids to get back in the water and not be afraid of it.
Okay, this is the same sentence typed using her voice clone.
We always encouraged our kids to get back in the water and not be afraid of it.
Listen to that. That is a phone speaking, okay? She typed in that sentence, we always encourage our kids to get back in the water. What I love about cloning is, of course, it really can sound very much like you, depending on how long of a recording sample you have. But I also really love the emotion and the inflection. So when I'm going and I'm using that text-to-speech app that I showed you, and let's say I typed in "no way" and I put 2 exclamation marks, it will actually say it more like "no way." But if I put a question mark, it would go "no way." So it's just, I mean, it's the farthest advancement that we have at the moment in terms of naturalness. So it's quite amazing. Okay, but here we are. We have some safety concerns, and rightly so, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. It's just that, you know, it's a feasible option, but we have to think about these issues. Now, I'm specifically working with 11 Labs because they're giving free licenses to those with ALS. So you can't just go get a license. There's a process to go through, which we could talk about after, and you have to have a verification of your diagnosis. So what 11 Labs has done is they make sure that there's a very elaborate consent and identity verification that's required. They have clear policies against impersonation and misuse. And the voice must be used with permission. There's a sign-in, and then there's this API code that's like a serial number. So there are some safety features for sure. They are also monitoring and tracing the user's accounts and making sure that it is you that is using the voice. But we have to say, no technology is safe, and the ethical use is essential. So even though this is so exciting, it is a personal decision, and I want you all to know that cloning is completely optional. So my role is not to convince you to do it, it's to be sure that you understand your options so that you can decide what's right for you. So it's really important that you look through, these are some ethical questions to ask and to really be talking with your speech pathologist. This should be, and I'm not talking one time, I'm talking ongoing conversation about how you're feeling. Let's say you decide you want to go ahead with voice cloning. You would have these conversations like, Who owns my voice modal? How is it going to be accessed? Can I delete it if I want to? Can I change my mind? What is their policy on, like their safety policy? It should never be used without your knowledge and your permission. And I would say this because this happens sometimes. Just because someone loves you doesn't mean that they should be using your voice on your behalf, like actually typing something in and then it's speaking, because that's you. That has become your vocal identity, right? Your voice belongs to you. So these are things that have to be discussed. It is highly recommended that it's discussed regularly with the SLP. You revisit it perhaps, every 6 months to a year at your clinic visits, and as your decisions are actually documented in the medical record. So we know what to do with your voice. We know what happens. What do you want done with your voice should you pass away? What are we going to do with this? So these are decisions to think about. They're not permanent. You can change your mind. You could even decide to do the recordings and clone or voice bank. And then if it comes time to use it, you could be like, actually, I don't want to, and delete it. So really, again, full decision-making is in your court. So in summary, there are different ways to preserve your voice. And you might be wondering, well, which one should I choose? So these are just some examples. If you were to say, well, I really want my grandchild to hear my own voice and especially my stories and about my recipes, then maybe legacy, which is just related to, saving memories and things, or message banking might be the best fit for you. Maybe you don't love technology. That's totally okay. Maybe you say, well, I want to keep working, and cloning might actually be the best option for you. Or those lots of people I have say, well, I don't even want any of this. No problem. Again, this is whatever you want. So again, message I think is loud and clear. You can talk with your SLP or Kaya in BC for more information, to have a very personalized discussion around your options. Okay, so now moving on to a different topic a bit, let's discuss what you would do if you notice speech changes. So I'm not talking about voice preservation any longer, but what would you actually do to speak more clearly? But before we start talking about communication strategies and technology, I'd like to remind you to think about why we communicate in the first place. And I really like my patients to think about this because it's not just about voice or voice preservation. It's honestly a lot more about communication. How can I help you maintain your communication so that you can still tell people you love them, ask questions, make decisions, tell stories, jokes, ask for help, participate in work or hobbies, just like stay connected. So that is what is really most important. So my goal is not simply to preserve your speech, it's to preserve your ability to do the things that matter most to you, to express yourself, maintain your relationships, and continue participating in your life. And that's called quality of life, right? So speech is one way we communicate, and communication is how we maintain those relationships. So if we're talking just speech right now, maybe you've got some slightly slurred speech, or you're noticing that I just trip over my words a bit. I just need a little help. When your speech is slightly affected, changing how you speak can make a really great impact. Slow down. I'm going to do that now because I've been feeling like I'm talking fast because it's 3:32 on my end. Slow down. Breathe more often. Enunciate all the words in your sentence. What happens is that as your sentence gets longer, or maybe you have more complex words like refrigerator versus fridge, refrigerator, if someone was slurring a little bit, some of those sounds might get mushed together. So speaking slowly and saying, can you get that out of the refrigerator? I've slowed down and I over-exaggerated my sounds. Now, when I'm doing it, over-exaggerating, my mouth looks weird because we don't talk like that. But when you have slightly weakened muscles here, they're not moving as far as mine maybe did. But yet you have to feel like it is. You have to almost do like a read my lips. You have to over exaggerate. And then those weakened muscles will work a little harder to get there, but they won't look odd. Okay. So what I tell my patients is go in the bathroom, look at yourself, focus on sounds like, if you have weaker lips, you're going to have some trouble with w, like rounding sounds like W, w. Wednesday, we will work. I don't know. Let's just use that. So you go into the bathroom and you really focus on rounding. Wednesday, we will work. Okay. So your speech therapist can give you ideas on words, on actual readings and scripts and things so that you can actually practice this. And this would be speech therapy. And this is what we do. There are times where you can have speech therapy when you have ALS. Okay, so another thing that's important though is to be talking to your communication partner. I would help them understand that they have a couple jobs to do as well to make sure that you are well understood. So a few things. You want to be facing each other. You want to be in a relatively lit room so we can see your face, your lips. We want to make sure that you're not getting interrupted. So the partner would not continually interrupt or guess for you, just unless that's what you want. And you guys have to have a conversation about what's acceptable in terms of, interrupting or filling in the blanks. Okay. One strategy that works really nicely is repeating back so now I'm talking about to the partner, repeating back what you understood and then tell them what you didn't. So you could say, what do I have here? What was the last part? I hear you wanted to go where? So just repeat the last part. Don't repeat the whole sentence again. So it's really important that the listener is honest with you and tells you when they're not understanding. You can sometimes read their cues, but they shouldn't be pretending that they understand. They can say, I didn't totally get that. Can you slow down? Or let's try that again. So you have to have a conversation about it. Another thing that's important is trying to conserve your energy when you're talking, also when you're swallowing. This is a disease where you are tired a lot. And so in anything we can do to make it a little easier for you to speak and use those strategies, we want to do. So you want to make your environment not quite so loud. See if you can reduce any background noise. If you're going out to eat, maybe choose a quieter restaurant than one that's like absolutely packed and the sound's echoing all over the place. Maybe make sure you're speaking, if you're in the same house together, like close to each other, not room to room, far away. Don't have the dishwater running or the dishwasher or things like that while you're talking. And then you may have to consider a voice amplifier, which is that little piece of equipment down below there, which is simply you wear a microphone and that little speaker makes your voice louder. So if you have a quieter voice because of muscles weakened here or in your respiratory system, that would help you. But even for those that have more of a strain, harsh voice, talking a lot quieter can bring the voice on easier. And so a voice amplifier can also be helpful. What do we do when, your speech just isn't quite enough? It's giving you troubles and you feel like you need something I call it supplementing. So it's not like you need a device to constantly speak now, but you're speaking and you need something else. That can be anything. Again, it's not about you choose the right technology. It is more about what do you feel the most comfortable communicating with. I have a lot of people that just like writing. Oh, sorry, my silly hair. They just like writing. They just want to use a notebook and pen or a boogie board that I'll show you later. That's fine. As long as you find that to be effective for you and quick, that's great. But there are other times where using a phone or a tablet, like text to speech or actual speech generating device down below there, is a good idea. So that's what would happen is we would have you sent to an assistive technology center. In BC, it would be Kaya, and they would help you. I think there may be other community SLPs too that would help you set up the proper device that works for your situation. And then there's those that say, I don't want any technology, or they do take the phone or the technology, but they also need a backup in case it's nighttime and you can't see the screen, or you're in the bathroom and you just need something quick. So you should always have some no tech or low tech solutions around. We're all familiar with letter boards. That little colored board in the bottom is a combination of using letters to spell and then maybe having some pre-stored messages that you say all the time. You just want to quickly point to get your message across. The little device on the right is called the boogie board. It's just this little LCD screen and it's really light. You could also use that to write so you're not going through tons of paper. But if you found it difficult to use your hands to point or to write, and your head was also, your neck was maybe weaker where it was harder for you to point with your head, then we would look at eye pointing. And there's a wonderful sheet, it's called the Eye Link, that I'm holding with my colleague there. It's a transparent letter board. We also have ones that are clear, no letters, just the cells. And then what you do is you take a dry erase marker, and write in your messages. So maybe it's like, my BiPAP's leaking, or I need suction. And then the user, so then if I'm your partner, I take that board and I hold it up between the two of us. And you would look at the letter that you want or the message that you want, and you just stay looking at it. And while you're looking, let's say to the top right corner, I start to pull the board down and over until I see our eyes connecting right through that sheet. It's very quick and easy. And once we connect, I know that, oh, you need suction, or, oh, your letter was A. So great tools out there. Again, your SLP can help you more, but these are some ideas of how you would use various AAC tools. And you might say to me, but what if I can't use my hands? Don't worry. We have alternate ways for you to type or text, whether that be on-screen keyboards that you might then use with head pointing, putting a little camera reads a dot on your head or your glasses, and you can move the cursor with your head, or adapted pointers or special mice or mouse for your computer. There's the head pointing, there's eye pointing. So many people know about eye gaze. Might just need a mounting system or a lighter type of device. Or something that I end up telling people quite a bit is for those that are more, they have their upper extremities, their hands involved quite a bit, and it's getting really hard to hold and type their phone, but their speech is very good, then you would want to use voice control on your phone. So that is through the accessibility feature in your settings, and you go to it, you turn it on, and then you get all those little numbers beside all of your icons. And then all you would do if you wanted to open up your calendar is you would go open to, and then the calendar would be like, boop, and then that would be all gridded again with numbers, and you could easily send emails, look online, scroll, whatever you want to do with this voice control. So occupational therapists can help you with that as well. It's just, again, I wanted to give you some food for thought that there are ways. And I always tell people, please tell me what you're struggling with mentally. Like, she says all these things, but she doesn't realize I can't do X, Y, and Z. Well, tell us, because if you do, I bet we can problem solve and figure out how to work around it, or think of something different, right? So, key take-home messages. There is no right or wrong choice, whether it's about voice preservation or AAC, which is augmentative or alternative communication. So using a device or something. Planning early preserves your options. Your values guide every decision. No matter if we're talking this or diet modifications or feeding tube, your values guide. But we have to talk about these things. So an SLP, we are here to assess and educate you, intervene early and regularly, revisit these decisions over time, and then support your informed decisions, whatever they may be. How do you find assistance? In BC, you go to your local ALS clinic SLP or SLPs through Kaya BC. If you're not sure, you can ask your ALS Society for referrals, or like they can help you find. I would imagine that in BC there's community SLPs out there, and there's also private SLPs that would be willing to help as well. So I'm at the end. I will stop sharing in a minute, but if you do have questions, we're going to talk about them now. But also, if you want to get a hold of me, here is my contact information. And it was a pleasure to share all this with you. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing here. There we go.
Thank you, Kerry, for sharing your knowledge with us today. That was very informative. We can now open the floor to questions. So if anybody has any, they can feel free to add them into the Q&A, which is at the bottom of your screen. And again, if you're not seeing that, you could just click on the More button. And there's also a chat option there as well. So please feel free to ask your questions, and Kerry can go ahead and answer them for us. I'm not seeing any questions at the moment.
I tried to think of a question for you. Does anyone have any?
Oh, I dropped one here.
Okay, good.
How to access 11 labs?
Okay, well, I would still highly recommend going through your SLP, but here's what happens. You go through 11 labs, you can Google them, but what you should Google is 11 labs impact program. Okay, so it's the specific program that they have for people with ALS. So once you can apply online for this impact program, but before you can even get further, you do need a verification letter of your diagnosis from your clinic or your SLP. So in our clinic, it does say doctor, but in our clinic, I provide the letters. I send it off, let's say to you, and then you have to take that letter, attach it to your application, and then they will provide that free license for you.
Thank you, Kerry. I hope that answers your question. But if it doesn't, you can feel free to add in.
Yes.
And we do have another question. I'm just going to put my glasses on here.
Yeah.
What is an appropriate cost for these technologies, such as eye tracking communication devices, and do you need medical insurance?
I'm not the best person to say about the cost, but because I don't work in the Assistive Technology Center. In Alberta, we have two. One is called ICANN and one is called Assets. So they're similar to Kaya. In our province, we have funding that can piggyback onto this through Alberta Aids to Daily Living. I am not familiar with BC in terms of your funding or your insurance. I know if we all have private insurance, some of that can be covered through private insurance as well. But I'm thinking, if we're talking about an eye gaze device that you were to purchase privately on your own, I am guessing it's $15,000 or more. But again, I would absolutely not purchase anything private until you go and talk to an SLP, because I have had people that have been very keen and they come to me with, let's say, a new diagnosis, and they're like, oh, I saw this online and I bought it. And I'm like, oh no, it's a type of device that for their situation, as you saw, ALS is different for everyone. And they didn't realize what they were going to need with the device in terms of hand function, as an example. So I think it's really important that you talk to someone first to kind of guide you through the best way to purchase something. Thank you for asking.
Thanks for that, Kerry. And I just wanted to add if there were any additional information required, you can always email Alex at the ALS Society of BC. So we have a couple more questions. One is, do you have a suggestion for a Punjabi speaking person?
Well, yes. I was just going to look up. There, there are different communication actually dedicated devices that you would get. I was talking about through Kaya, okay, that support multiple languages. There are also certain apps that will support that. Again, some of these apps alone could be $300 or more, and I wouldn't necessarily say you should purchase one without talking to Kaya or the society first, okay? So high tech or tech, yes, there's some ways to work around Punjabi. Low tech, what I often do is make a message board that would have both the Punjabi word and the English word if you have home care coming in or other people, so that we could be doing low tech with Punjabi English and then high tech with the app that could switch between the two languages. So there's options for sure.
That's great. Thanks for addressing that, Kerry. And there was an additional question regarding apps, so thank you for that. And for now, we've paused on questions, but if anybody has anything else that we have time still to answer. We still have about 10 minutes, so if anybody has questions, now is your chance. Not in a moment at the moment. Kerry, since we have a few minutes, I was just going to ask, you were speaking about some breathing exercises as well. So is that something that's incorporated when someone would come to visit with their speech pathologist?
Again, I will say yes, with a little bit of a caveat. That is also something that is newer in literature. This exercise is called respiratory muscle strength training, so RMST, and more specifically, speech pathologists along with respiratory therapists are using expiratory muscle strength training, so EMST. It's a little tiny device that has a valve, and it has a resistance where you can turn the dial so that you're actually getting resistance when you're blowing. And when you're blowing with resistance, it's almost like you're taking your lungs to the gym and you're actually training your expiratory muscles. The reason speech pathologists are involved in this is because I want nice, strong expiratory muscles and muscles in this throat area to be extra strong to do a really good cough should something go down the wrong way or what. So it has been shown to have a good effect in swallowing and in cough preservation in early stage ALS. So yes, our clinic does it. Not every clinic does. Again, it's a relatively newer technique in Canada. In the States, it's been offered for a little bit more. So yes.
Great, thanks. And in that time, we did get a few more questions. All right, so how and when do I contact Kaya?
Okay, well, you can contact Kaya at any point. I guess it depends now. The society might have to help me out on this because I'm from Alberta, but Kaya is not only associated with the clinic, but also there's like one on the island, there's some around interior. So I think it really depends where you live, correct?
Yes. So Kaya, they have the auto referrals so the people can connect with Kaya directly. So they just go to their website, fill out the form, or contact them over the phone if you need to.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Alex. We have another question here. I find sometimes my voice is better and clearer, and at other times it's strained and my enunciation is worse. Can you explain why? And also, if I talk more, sometimes it gets mildly better. I'm wondering why that is.
I was expecting the reverse. Okay. All right, here's what happens. When you are speaking, when any of us are speaking, we have to use our respiratory muscles to push air up to get our vocal cords to vibrate and make sound. And then we have a sound, ah, but now we need to shape that sound into something. So ah, ma, right? Well, you don't sing it, but ah, ma, right? So I need respiratory, respiratory, phonation or voice, and articulation all have to coordinate together. When ALS starts to affect the breathing or the speaking muscles to any degree, those muscles get a little bit weaker. And if it's really early and subtle, you're just noticing these intermittent changes. And so you may notice the strain in your voice that has to do with these laryngeal muscles here, or a quieter voice. And so usually when a person is talking for an extended period of time, their muscles get tired. It's just like if you were constantly lifting a weight on your bicep, there's a point where you're like, oh, his muscle is very tired. So that is typically what happens when you're speaking for too long, when these muscles are weak and tired. Now, sometimes people will say to me, it's better in the morning. That's because you're rested. Now, the thought about, well, my speech is actually better the more I talk. Maybe I'm wondering if you have more spasticity or tightness and slowness, and your muscles need like a little bit of almost warm-up time. I wonder. That might make sense to me, versus they're weaker and they fatigue more with time. But feel free to ask me more if that didn't answer enough.
Thanks for your insight on that, Kerry, sorry. And we have a couple more. Let's see here. A response to what you had just advised, I do have spasticity and slurs.
Yeah, that actually makes sense to me then. Why you need a little bit of time to warm up the muscles. Yeah, and perhaps your speech pathologist could give you a couple exercises to do to warm those up, breathing and a little bit of voice exercises, depending again. Like, it's not a good idea for me or you to go on the internet, like me to just say something, or you to go on the internet and be like, what are my speech exercises? Because it really does depend, because this ALS is so different for everybody. It depends a lot on different situations about what's going on with you. So those exercises might be good for somebody and not so great for someone else because they won't work the same way. So it really is important to ask for more help.
Thanks again, Kerry.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's any response to that, please feel free to add in. I do have another question in the meantime, and that is, are there different programs to use for message banking versus voice or AI banking?
Okay. All right. Okay. So remember, message banking is just recording a specific message, one phrase, one message, right? So that's done on your voice memo app or any type of like voice recording app. So there's on iPhone and Android, there's one called voice memo. So you click it and you just click record, and then you say, I love you. And then that's it. Now you go to your next recording. You record one message per file, per recording. So there's nothing special about message banking. In terms of companies, you asked about, what was the question about? Like, what are the companies for voice banking?
The question was just, are there different programs to use?
Programs. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So kind of like programs or services. So yes. So with voice banking, the one that's going to give you more of that computerized or synthesized voice, we like Voice Keeper, which is in the, I feel like I haven't used it in a long time actually now, $250 to $300. You record only a handful or, not very many sentences, so it's not bad. And then there's Model Talker that I used to use all the time because I found the quality better. And And at the time that I was using it, it was about $200 US. But see, interestingly, look at that. Like, I've been in ALS for 20 years. I just don't use voice banking as much anymore. But again, I want you to understand that doesn't mean you don't use voice banking anymore because it's old news. It's just, it depends what people want. So those are the two best services I would. And Apple Personal Voice. You can also do free Apple Voice with your phone.
Thanks for all those options mentioned earlier. Does anybody else have any other questions today? We're just about time, but we do have a few more minutes, so please feel free to go ahead and ask. So I don't see any more questions, but we've got another minute to go. So if you want to squeeze in a question, Kerry's available.
I think I'm just thinking that was such a good question about the different services. And I tried to not, like, I didn't want to go into too many details during this presentation, but I know that Kaya and even like ALS Canada, ALS Association in the States, they all have summaries of the programs. I also have a slide summary. If you would rather just get the info from me, you can email and I'll send it to you. Yeah, that gives you a little breakdown on the various services.
Perfect. Well, it's 2:00 now, and I'm not seeing any more questions. Thank you, Kerry, for such an excellent presentation.